The night my father threw me out, the air was cold enough to burn my lungs. I stood on the driveway with nothing but a small bag, watching the house I grew up in fade behind me. I had no money, no plan, just the echo of his last words in my head, and the shadow of betrayal chasing me into the dark. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 26 years old, and until recently, I thought my life was unshakable. I grew up surrounded by polished floors, expensive suits, and quiet dinners where every word was calculated. My father, Richard Brooks, was a man who moved the world with contracts and handshakes. He was respected, feared, and, at least when I was a boy, someone I believed in. My mother had been the light in the house, the warmth that softened his edges. But when she passed away during my teenage years, the air in our home changed. The warmth left, replaced by the sharp scent of his cologne and the faint hum of his phone on endless business calls. It became a house of deals, not a home of love. I was never the heir he wanted. My father envisioned me as his shadow, suited, powerful, calculated. I had other dreams. I wanted to build a life with creativity at its heart. Music, photography, art, things he dismissed as hobbies for people without ambition. I didn't share his hunger for dominance, and I think that was the first crack between us. Still, I believed blood would hold us together. I thought disagreements would fade, that time would find us common ground. But I didn't yet understand the kind of man my father was, how, when he wanted something, the word no wasn't a disagreement. It was a challenge. And I was about to learn what happened to people who challenged him. It happened on a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the air felt almost too clean, like the world was waiting for something to happen. My father had invited his oldest friend, Gregory Hunt, to dinner. Gregory was the kind of man who carried himself like he owned every room he walked into. And that night he brought his daughter, Isabella. She was beautiful in the kind of way that makes people stop and look twice, tall, poised, with eyes that didn't give away much. But there was something about her that felt distant. Her smile was perfect, her manners flawless. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was speaking to someone rehearsing lines they'd memorized long ago. Dinner was polite, even pleasant. Until my father started talking about a future partnership. At first, I thought he meant between their companies, mergers, investments, the usual talk that dominated his life. But then his gaze shifted to me, and his words took a turn I didn't see coming. He said it as though it were already decided. I would marry Isabella. The marriage, he explained, would not only merge the Brooks and Hunt families, but also secure control of Gregory's resort empire. It was, in his mind, the perfect business move, a marriage as a contract, love as a secondary luxury. But there was a problem. I already had someone, Lily. My girlfriend of 3 years, the person who knew me better than anyone, the person who stood with me through every failure and small victory. My father knew about her, but to him, she wasn't part of the plan. He called her a distraction, someone without strategic value. That night, I made a choice. I told him no. I thought the conversation would end in anger. I didn't realize it would end in exile. The days after that dinner were heavy with silence. My father and I crossed paths in the house like strangers in a hotel lobby. Polite nods, no real conversation. I could feel the weight of something building, like a storm gathering beyond the horizon. Then one evening, he called me into his study. That room had always been his domain, a fortress of dark wood shelves, leather chairs, and the faint scent of expensive cigars. Deals were made here, destinies shaped. Tonight, mine was about to be rewritten. He didn't waste words. His voice was sharp, controlled, every syllable heavy with authority. I had a choice, he said. Marry Isabella and secure a future most people could only dream of, or walk away from this house and everything that came with it. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought about Lily, her laughter, her kindness, the way she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I thought about the life my father envisioned for me, built on contracts and power plays, where love was nothing more than a marketing line in a wedding announcement. I told him my life wasn't for sale. His expression didn't change, but I could feel the temperature in the room drop. He stood, walked to the door, and opened it without another word. The sound was louder than it should have been, echoing in my ears like a verdict. An hour later, I was standing on the driveway with a single duffel bag. The gates closed behind me, the metallic clang final and unforgiving. I didn't just lose a roof that night, I lost the illusion that my father's love was unconditional. The night air hit me like a wall, sharp and unforgiving. I stood on the edge of the driveway, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, staring at the closed gates. The house behind me was lit like a monument, every window glowing, yet it felt colder than the street I was now standing on. I walked. There was nowhere else to go. The city stretched out ahead, its streets glistening from a recent rain, the hum of traffic blending with the rhythm of my thoughts. Every step felt heavier, not just from the bag on my shoulder, but from the realization that I had no safety net anymore. I checked my phone. My bank account balance was a painful reminder that I had only a few weeks' worth of living expenses, maybe less if I wasn't careful. The contacts I'd once relied on were tied to my father's name. I knew better than to expect help from them now. So I called Lily. My voice cracked when I told her what happened. There was no hesitation, just a soft urgency in her voice, telling me to come to her. Her apartment was small, just one bedroom with walls painted in warm earth tones. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a weight lift. She didn't ask for the full story. She just wrapped me in a blanket, made tea, and sat with me in the quiet. Outside, the world kept moving, traffic lights blinking, strangers hurrying past. But inside, for the first time that night, I wasn't just a man who had lost everything. I was a man who still had someone in his corner. And that, I realized, was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The first few weeks felt like living in a haze. I woke each day with the same dull ache in my chest, the reality hitting me all over again. I was starting from nothing. Lily's apartment became both my refuge and my base of operations. Her couch doubled as my workspace, my bed, and sometimes my dining table when I couldn't bring myself to sit upright at the actual one. She worked long hours, and I hated the thought of her coming home to find me doing nothing, so I took every odd job I could get. Days blurred into nights filled with delivery shifts, warehouse work, and any freelance photography gigs I could scrape together. The paychecks were small, the hours long, and the exhaustion relentless. I'd collapse into bed most nights with aching muscles, my hands smelling faintly of cardboard, ink, or the oil from restaurant kitchens. Through it all, Lily stood beside me without a hint of complaint. She cooked on the nights I came home too tired to speak. She made space for my equipment no matter how cramped the apartment became. And when the money ran low, she was the one who reminded me that it was temporary, that storms pass and survivors emerge stronger. But my father hadn't disappeared from the picture entirely. I began hearing whispers from old contacts, people I once thought were friends. They told me he was telling a different story, one where I was the one who had abandoned him, reckless and ungrateful, unable to handle responsibility. It hurt, but I learned quickly that survival leaves no room for pride. My focus had to be on making rent, putting food on the table, and holding on to the one person who still believed in me. Every day was a battle, but at least it was mine to fight. It was a gray, rainy afternoon when I got the message from my father. After months of silence, his name on my phone screen felt almost unreal. The text was simple: lunch tomorrow. Private club. My treat. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity, and maybe a flicker of hope, pulled me in. The next day, I walked into the club, my clothes still smelling faintly of last night's delivery run. The air inside was thick with the scent of cigars and polished wood, the low hum of quiet conversations between men who dealt in power. My father was already seated at a corner table. Beside him sat Isabella. She greeted me politely, but her eyes didn't hold warmth, they held expectation. My father wasted no time. He spoke of second chances and restoring the family bond. Then he laid it out. Marry Isabella, and I'd return to the company, to the house, to the life I had known. It was all there in front of me, the comfort, the security, the network I'd lost. For a brief, shameful second, I imagined it. No more worrying about rent. No more nights counting coins in my hand before going to the store. But then Lily's face came to mind, her tired but patient smile, her hands making tea for me when I had nothing, her voice telling me we'd make it through. I looked at Isabella. She was beautiful, poised, perfect on paper. But there was no love there. Only a contract waiting for my signature. I thanked them for the lunch, stood up, and walked out. It was raining harder now, but the air felt cleaner. I'd left the table with empty pockets, but I'd kept something far more valuable, my choice. Turning down my father's offer felt righteous in the moment, but the weight of that choice came crashing down in the weeks that followed. The job slowed. Photography clients canceled or postponed projects, leaving gaps in my already fragile income. Even the delivery shifts dried up when the company cut hours. Lily and I started living off the bare minimum. Dinner became whatever we could make from pantry scraps, plain pasta, rice with a little salt, eggs when we could afford them. We learned to stretch every dollar until it nearly tore in half. The hardest part wasn't the hunger, it was the quiet shame. Walking past restaurants I couldn't afford, turning down invitations from friends because I didn't have the money for even a coffee. Every step outside felt like a reminder of what I'd lost. There was one night I'll never forget. I'd just gotten home after another rejection email from a potential client. I didn't even have the energy to speak. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall while the hum of the fridge filled the silence. Lily sat beside me, not saying a word, just resting her hand over mine. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She knew I wouldn't believe it in that moment. Instead, she said something simple. Worth isn't measured by what you have, but by who you are when you have nothing. Those words didn't magically fix things, but they kept me from breaking completely. They reminded me that even if I'd lost my father's approval, my home, and my financial safety net, I still had the one thing he couldn't take, someone who chose to stand beside me, even in the dark. And that, I decided, was worth enduring the cold for a little longer. Opportunities never arrive when you're ready for them. They show up when you're barely holding yourself together. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those gray, restless days when the city feels half asleep. I was scrolling through job listings when I saw a post from a small local magazine. They needed a photographer for a feature on the city's hidden corners, old alleyways, forgotten buildings, markets that didn't make it into tourist brochures. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover a week's rent, but it was the kind of work that lit something in me. I sent in my portfolio that afternoon. By evening, the editor replied, I was hired. For the next 2 weeks, I roamed the city with my camera, chasing the way light spilled across cracked bricks at sunrise, capturing the quiet poetry of rusted fire escapes, listening to the stories of shopkeepers who'd been there for decades. I poured every ounce of myself into the assignment. When the issue came out, I didn't expect much. But the response was more than I could have imagined. People shared the article online, praising the photos. A couple even said they'd visited the spots because of my work. Then, slowly, emails started trickling in. Requests for portraits, event coverage, a travel blogger who wanted a photographer for an overseas trip. It wasn't a flood, but it was a start. Steady, honest work that was mine, earned without my father's name behind it. Lily celebrated with me by cooking pasta, this time with sauce and fresh herbs. We ate at the tiny kitchen table, laughing for the first time in months. It wasn't just about the jobs. It was proof that I could still climb out of the hole I'd been thrown into. The tide was turning, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was steering the current. It had been almost a year since I last saw my father when he appeared again. The setting couldn't have been more different from our last meeting. This time, I wasn't walking into his world. I was standing in mine. My work had been selected for a local art exhibit, a collection of photographs capturing the quiet resilience of the city's forgotten places. The gallery was small but full that night, warm lighting, soft music, the air buzzing with conversation. I was speaking to a couple interested in buying one of my prints when I saw him near the back of the room. Richard Brooks, my father. He stood with his hands in his pockets, scanning the walls as if he were evaluating the art the same way he evaluated business deals. Our eyes met briefly. He gave the faintest nod, the kind that carried more weight than words. After the event wound down, he approached me. He commented on my work, said it was impressive in that measured tone he used when something had exceeded his expectations, but he didn't want to admit it fully. There was no apology. My father was not a man who trafficked in them, but there was a subtle shift in his voice, a softening. He spoke about missed opportunities, about how he'd been wrong before to underestimate me. Then came the question if we could talk sometime. No demands, no ultimatums. Just an opening. I told him maybe, and I meant it not as a promise but as a boundary. I had built this life without him. Any conversation from here on would be on my terms. As he left, I realized something. He had come into my space, not the other way around. And that small difference meant everything. It's been 2 years since the night I stood outside my father's gates with nothing but a duffel bag. 2 years since the cold air stung my face and the silence between us turned into a wall I thought I could never climb. Now, I wake up in a small but bright apartment that smells faintly of coffee and fresh paint. Lily and I made it ours. Secondhand furniture we refinished together. Photographs lining the walls, each one a reminder of how far we've come. My business is steady. My calendar full with shoots that take me across the city and sometimes far beyond it. We're not rich, not in the way my father measures success, but the bills are paid, the fridge is full, and there's laughter in our home. And that's a kind of wealth he'll never understand. Sometimes, when I walk past the old house, I see the same gates, still cold and unyielding. I don't feel the sting I once did. I don't see it as the place that cast me out. I see it as the place where my life truly began. My father and I speak occasionally now. The conversations are short, polite, but they're different. He knows I'm not the son he can mold into a dealmaker. And I know he's not the man I once thought he was. That clarity is a kind of peace. Lily stood by me when there was nothing to stand on, and because of that, every step forward feels like a shared victory. The life I live now isn't the one my father planned. It's the one I chose. And if I had to lose everything to find it, then it was worth every moment in the cold. Because this isn't just survival. This is freedom. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.